Hello guys, and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about how to buy a car in Canada as a newcomer. If you are new in Canada and you need to buy a car, there are a few things that you need to know before you go ahead to make that particular purchase. If you've watched my previous video, one thing that I've stressed on most of the time is driving in Canada is not a luxury. Sometimes when you get here, you might need to get a car just to make your movement easier. It can create a new source of income for you, and sometimes too it can help improve the quality of your life. So now let's dive in and look at some of the factors you need to consider before you go ahead to make a purchase. The first step in buying a car in Canada is to make sure that at least you have an idea of your budget, how much money you can afford to spend, because cars can vary in prices depending on the year, the model, the type, even how many miles it has on it. So you need to have an idea of how much money you can actually afford to spend on a car. Additionally, you need to keep in mind that there might be other costs such as taxes, insurance, and even registration costs after buying the car. So you need to factor all these things into consideration when you make a decision to buy a car. And when it comes to determining your budget, there are other factors that you need to take into consideration to make sure that you have a clear idea of how much money you can afford. One thing you need to be aware of is your monthly income, how much money you are making on a monthly basis or even bi-weekly. You also need to know your monthly expenses, how much money you are currently spending on expenses. And also you need to have a clear idea of the cost of living in the province that you are in, because depending on the province that you are in, the cost of ownership of a car will be different. I have spoken to friends in Ontario who tell me that the insurance that they are paying, I hear it and it's twice the amount of money that I'm paying for my insurance, even though my car is a brand new car and theirs might be home use. A good rule of thumb that I have, that I give to anybody who speaks to me when it comes to managing their finances, when it comes to buying a car, is make sure that you are not spending more than 20% of your monthly income on getting a car when it comes to the cost of payments, insurance, taxes, and any other registration cost that that car will incur in a month. And when it comes to buying a car, it is important not just to consider only the purchase costs. You need to factor in things like the cost of maintenance, cost of insurance, cost of fuel, and other maintenance factors that might come into play. Because it will surprise you to know that some people end up spending money on buying a car because they feel that it's cheap, forgetting that the maintenance cost and other costs that comes with it will at least push their total cost of spending on that car very high in a month. So instead of sometimes just looking at the headline price of that car, look at the total cost of owning the car when it comes to just the purchase price, the maintenance, cost of fuel, and all that. And that can help you possibly to change your decision on buying a home use car to possibly buying a much newer car. A new car might have a higher purchase price, but it might come with warranty, sometimes free maintenance for a period of time, and all those things that costs that you might not incur during that period. And there are money that you'll be left in your pocket compared to, let's say, buying a car that doesn't come with warranty. A typical example is sometimes if you buy a brand new car, they might tell you that the next 5 years you might have free maintenance on some parts, you might have free change on some parts, even you might have free change on tires. And all these things are things that possibly you would have to buy yourself, or costs that you would have to incur yourself if you had gone for, let's say, a slightly used car or a used car in general. It is also important to consider your financing options when it comes to deciding on your budget. Also, you have to remember that a car loan might come with a lower interest than a personal loan, but it might also come with a stricter lending criteria. So my advice is, if you decide to look into financing options, make sure you shop around, at least compare possibly options that companies can offer you, options that dealers can offer you, before you go ahead to make a decision to at least commit to one particular financing options. Because from my experience, sometimes even speaking to the same company, if you talk to different reps, you might hear different numbers because they are all sales agents and they might be trying to close a deal. So by trying to shop around, you end up getting the best deal possible that can be offered. Overall, determining your budget is going to be critical in your decision to buy a car, because that's going to determine the type of car you can actually afford. It will determine the kind of car, the year you can actually afford, the type of payment option, that you can actually afford. So even though you might want a particular car, your budget might be telling you something else. So it is critical to at least make a decision on your budget before you decide to buy a car or walk into any dealership. My second advice is research your options when it comes to buying a car. When it comes to buying a car in Canada, there are many options that are available to you. You can choose to buy it from a private person. You can choose to walk into a dealership to get one for yourself, or you can even go to online shops like Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, and others to try and get a car for yourself. And whichever option you decide to go with is going to come with its pros and cons. So as a buyer, it is important to at least know all these pros and cons before you make a decision. If you are buying the car from a private person, you know that the moment you hand the money to that person, that deal is closed, and any other issues that comes with the car is going to be your problem. If you are buying it from an online shop, you need to do your due diligence. You need to see the car. You need to test drive it. You need to get somebody who is specialized mechanic to work on the car to see all the issues that the car comes with. Because the moment you hand the money to that person, that deal is closed. And also you need to be careful if you are buying it from those online stores that you are not scammed, because most people get scammed buying cars from those sites. And last but not the least, if you are buying the car from a dealership, sometimes they won't just hand the car over to you and break that relationship. They might want to maintain that relationship. So they might extend some warranties to you. If it's a used car, they might tell you that you have a couple of miles to drive, and any issue that comes, you can bring it back to them for them to take care of it for you. And sometimes they can tell you that you have a week to use the car. If you don't like the car, just bring the car back to them. And if it's a new car, you might have an ongoing relationship with them. So it's not just you buy the car and that's the end of the relationship. So you need to know all these things before you make a decision. And in researching the car, you need to make sure that you have a clear idea of which type of car you want. Whether it's sedan, a compact, SUV, you need to know which type of car you want for yourself, because this is a huge investment, and whichever car you decide to invest in, it has to be something that you love and something that you will enjoy driving around. And normally my advice is, after deciding on the type of car you want, you can head over to most of these sites to at least have a casual search, to have an idea of the prices, to compare, so that at least you have a competitive edge when you meet anybody to start negotiating the price of the car. And if you are somebody who is just buying a car for the first time, or you are not actually very familiar with cars, so you don't understand and know which type that you want for yourself, my advice to head on to websites like Edmunds or even Consumer Reports, which will give you an idea of some reviews of some of these cars. So you have an idea of at least the issues that comes with those cars before you invest in the cars. It will give you an idea of the good reviews and the bad reviews, so you know what you are putting yourself into by acquiring that particular car. Because some cars might be very competitive on the market, but the maintenance cost will be very high. Other cars might come as very expensive, but you realize that it costs very low to maintain those cars. Now, after deciding on your budget and doing your research to know the type of car that at least you want for yourself, the third thing that you need to do will be to consider your financing. If you find out that possibly the car that you want, you cannot afford to pay for it yourself in full, then what you need to at least explore will be some financing option. Fortunately, this is a credit system, so there are a lot of financing options that will be available to you if you decide to acquire a car. This can include loans from the banks or financing from even the dealership. And with these two, it is important to compare and contrast all the options that are available before you make a decision to choose one. So if you cannot afford to pay for the car in full, make sure you compare and contrast all the financing options that are available to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of options that can be available to you. Your first option will be financing. Many people opt for this particular option because it allows you to pay for the value of the car and the interest over the payment period. So basically, if you get a car and the car, let's say, costs about $30,000 and you decide to pay for it over 7 years, what they are going to do is calculate the interest that you'll be paying on the car, add it to the principal, and they will split the payment over that 7-year period, and you can decide whether you are going to pay for it on a bi-weekly basis, a monthly basis, or whatever interval that you agree with that particular lending institution. This can be a very good option, especially if you cannot afford to pay for a car upfront and you don't have the necessary cash to pay for that car outright. But one thing you need to be mindful of is the interest rates can vary widely. So make sure that whichever financing institution you are going with, you are getting the best deal possible. Number two, and this is one thing that most people try to run away from, or even newcomers who come in and have money in their pocket decide to go for, is actually paying the car upfront. If you have the cash, you pay for it in cash. And the truth is, if you have the money in your pocket and you can afford to pay for the car outright in cash, and let's say it's not a new car, then you can just go ahead and buy the car outright. The good thing is, if you buy the car outright, you don't have to do any monthly payment to any particular person because they own the car after that agreement is done, and you don't have to make any monthly payment to anyone. As long as the car doesn't give you problems, you have nothing to worry about. The third option is actually to lease the car. The difference between this particular one and actually financing is basically you are getting the car, you are paying for the value of the car over, let's say, a 2 or 3 year window, but you don't actually own the car. It's like you are leasing the car and you are expected to return the car after that particular period. And this is especially a good idea if you actually need the car for just a short period of time. What they do is they can actually lease the car to you for a couple of months, you drive it, but one thing you need to be mindful of is it will come with a lot of restrictions on mileage, other things that you can use the car for, because basically the car is not for you. You are actually renting the car for a period of time. So this is a good idea if basically you are coming into the country for a couple of years and you have plans of actually not staying for long. The fourth option is actually renting. Basically, when you come in, there are a lot of companies that are renting our cars. And if you are in for a short period of time, you can afford to rent a car. So basically, when you come in, there are a lot of companies around that can afford to rent you a car. So if you basically need a car to drive around, but you don't want to invest in the car, then you can rent a car for that period of time. And all you will be doing is you are just actually buying fuel for the car and driving it around. All the other aspects of payment might be taken care of. Things like maintenance, servicing, and all that might be done for the company. And the only thing you'll be paying for will be the rental fees. But you also need to be mindful of the fact that the longer you drive the rental car, those rental fees will end up adding up. So all these things are things that you need to consider before you choose whether to rent a car or not. The fourth thing that you need to understand when you are buying the car, you need to understand the buying process. And when I say the buying process, you need to understand the process that you are going to go through. After you found the car, negotiated the price and everything, decided on the financing, how you are going to make the car yours. And this is going to include negotiating the price, completing a bill of sale, and obtain the necessary documentation such as the registration certificate and insurance. Additionally, when you are buying a used car, make sure at least you have the history of the car. You know all the maintenance that have been done on the car. Even if the car has been involved in an accident before, you know and understand what kind of work that was done with that particular car after it was involved in an accident. So you know what you are getting yourself into. Sometimes some cars might be involved in an accident and it has been repaired so much so that on the side of it, nothing is wrong. But when you are driving it, you can feel that aerodynamically the car doesn't feel right, and which is very dangerous for you because any small issue, you can end up involving yourself in an accident. I know as a newcomer, buying a car can be very overwhelming because I've gone through the process myself. But trust me, if you understand the buying process, it can help simplify a few things for you. And also, after getting the car, make sure you test drive the car yourself. As long as it's not a new car that's coming off the lot, make sure you test drive the car yourself before you commit to that particular car. By test driving, now you know what the car comes with, which makes it easier for you to make an offer on the car. And when your offer is accepted, now you can go ahead and finalize the purchase. There's been a lot of times where we've had people go in there, make an offer, now they test drive the car, they come back, try to make a new offer, and it become a whole mess. Go in, you test drive the car. If you like it, now you make an offer. And once your agreed price has been negotiated and agreed with, now you can go ahead and finalize the purchase. This will involve signing the contracts, transferring the ownership of the car to yourself, making sure that you've registered the car with the necessary provincial transportation authority. In my case, what happened was, after negotiating and agreeing on the purchase, because it was a new car, there wasn't much to negotiate with except the interest rate that was agreed with. When the car came in, all I had to do was go in, sign the contract in terms of the financing and all that, the payment terms. Then now the documents were handed to me, transfer of ownership was done. Then I went to the insuring authority to make sure that the car is actually insured, and my car number was issued. Then I came back to the dealership, handed them the necessary information, the number plate was put on the car, and I was ready to drive the car off the lot. And a quick tip here, before you sign any contracts when you are buying the car, make sure you read and understand every single term or word or phrase that has been used in that document, because I've seen most people, they don't read it because they are in a hurry to sign. They sign it, read it, and find out that maybe there were some things in there that they wish could have been changed. So right when you are sitting in front of the finance officer, make sure you ask for time, because he's getting paid for that time. So make sure you ask for time, read through the document. Anything that you don't understand, ask him about it, and it will shock you to know that there might be a lot of things in there that you wouldn't want to at least allow to be in there. You can ask some of the things to be taken out or some things to be added to help protect you in the long run. Me personally, when I was going in, I went with somebody who was much more experienced in that particular process. And when I read through the document, if there's something that I don't understand, I'll just look at him, and he will either wink or give me a sign to say that this one is no good, to ask for it to be taken out. So it's advisable that you read through the document before you put pen to paper. Don't be too eager to sign because you need a car. Make sure you are making the right decisions, because that's the best time for you to get the right deal. It might be too late after you sign those documents. The fifth point that we need to look at is basically the insurance and registration process. Once you've bought a car, whether it's new or old, you are going to need to insure it and register it before you'll be allowed to drive it around in Canada. Insurance is mandatory in Canada, and depending on your driving history, the model and type of year of car that you decide to drive, what you are going to pay for is going to be different from one person to the other. And even the province that you decide to drive that car in is also going to be a factor in terms of how much you are going to pay for when it comes to insurance. So these are things that you need to be mindful of. So when you are choosing the car, make sure you have an idea of how much insurance you might end up paying. I've heard of people who are paying much more insurance than they are even paying for the car itself because of the province that they find themselves in. So you need to do your research before you decide on all these things. And as much as there are going to be a lot of factors that will come into play to decide how much you pay for insurance, one thing that you have to be mindful of as a newcomer is you are going to be seen as a risk, which will end up affecting how much insurance that you pay. Because most times as a newcomer, if your driving history from your country is not accepted in the province that you are in, that's going to affect your driving history here. So that means you don't actually have driving history. So that will affect how much discount they can offer you when it comes to your insurance. Because if you have good driving history and you've driven for some time, there's some amount of discount that you get on your insurance. But if your driving history is not accepted, that means that you are going to end up paying the maximum possible. So these are things that you need to be mindful of. So if there's a possibility for you to at least get an extract from your driving authority in your home country before you come to Canada, it will be very helpful. So try at least you get it so that before you register for your driver's license, you can hand it to the authority here and see whether it will be accepted. So if your extract is accepted and as a result your driving history is actually accepted by your province, and they end up giving you even 10% discount on your insurance. If you are paying, let's say $200 a month, that would be like $20 savings every single month. That $20 over 12 months will add up to somewhere around $240. So that can actually add up. And most times during the registration process, they might have to issue you a driving number plate, a new number plate for your car, which is different from the one that you currently have on your car, which is a used car. And with that one, they will require to see your insurance, your driver's license, and proof of ownership that the car actually belongs to you before that number plate can actually be issued. So make sure that at least you have your driver's license before you make a decision to at least buy a car. And sometimes you may be required to have your car pass inspection before you'll be allowed to register. For example, in Ontario, you'll be required to obtain a safety certificate before you are allowed to register that particular car. The safety document is something that actually shows that your car has actually passed all inspection requirements and meets the requirements and safety requirements of that particular province to be allowed on the road. And one other thing that I also heard was, in a place like British Columbia, in addition to the safety certificate, you actually will need to pass an emission test before you can actually be allowed to register your car. These are a few things that I felt I have to share with you as somebody who has actually gone through the process of acquiring a car in Canada, so that it can also guide you if you have plans of acquiring a car when you land in Canada, or even if you're already in Canada and have plans of maybe looking into getting a car. Basically, as a newcomer coming to Canada, sometimes, like any other new place, buying a new car can seem very daunting. But I believe that with the right research, the right information, you can make the process as very simple as possible for yourself. If you need help, reach out to somebody who has actually gone through it. Learn from their mistakes so that you don't have to repeat them. And also try and open up, talk to people so that you can also learn from them easily, instead of going ahead and making those mistakes that cannot be erased. And also feel free to reach out. And if you have any lessons that you have gone through whilst trying to acquire in Canada, feel free to share it in the comment section. And if you found value in this video, feel free to share it with any family or friends who might also find value in it. And there are any questions that you want answered, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I always do well to respond to questions that are put in my comment section. Until the next video, cheers.